Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today, 10 in total. But before we start, an important announcement. Beginning today, join me live 6 p.m. and we will launch NCERT free crash course on our YouTube channel. To start with, we will cover all the important chapters of Class 11th NCERT, Polity NCERT, Our Constitution at Work. And these are the 8 lectures that we shall be discussing. After this book is over, Our Constitution at Work, then we will start with another Class 11th NCERT book called Political Theory. After that book is over, then we will launch another free initiative where I will discuss all the important landmark judgments of the Supreme Court relevant for the civil services examination. And for that, we need your encouragement, your support. Do press the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel should you wish to attend these free sessions. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, and let's look at topic number 1, which is very important for GS paper 1, which deals with Indian society. Dalits get entry to Tamil Nadu temple after peace talks. It is argued by historians, anthropologists, sociologists that after the later Vedic period, untouchability raised its ugly head in Indian society. And this untouchability was not only untouchability by touch, it was also by sight. That means those belonging to the Dalit community, they were not allowed to touch the upper caste people when it comes to offering food, offering water. And it was not only about touch, it was also about the sight. So if a Dalit was walking on the road and he would see a caste Hindu coming from the other side, he would jump in the mud because his stench will cause pollution to the member of the upper caste, or his shadow will cause pollution to the member of the upper caste. So it was untouchability, not just in touch, but also in sight. Then when the Constitution was enacted, Article 17, which is one of the absolute fundamental rights under the Part 3 of the Constitution, it says untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden. And remember, this term untouchability is in quotes. That means Constitution does not refer to the literal meaning of this word untouchability, but it refers to the historic practice of untouchability which has been practiced in India since centuries. And that form of untouchability is abolished and its practice in all its forms is forbidden. But then we see a clash between what is mentioned in the Constitution and the empirical reality. Constitution says untouchability is abolished. Its practice in any form is forbidden. But we see the practices of untouchability in one or the other form being practiced every single day in India. And there was one area where this practice or inhuman practice of untouchability was rampant, was the denial of entry to Dalits inside the temples. In an organized manner, the Dalits were forced not to enter the temples or not to pay obeisance at the deity which is inside the sacred sanctum sanctorum of the temples. In fact, to tell you a bit about history, the year was 1897. The Raja of Ramnad, he filed a petition in the court saying Nadars, they have forced their entry into the temple in Tamil Nadu. For example, this temple was Meenakshi Sundareshwar temple. Nadars have forced their entry into this temple, and the Raja of Ramnad filed a petition. And the court ruled against this temple entry. Then the Nadars, they raised a lot of money and filed a case, filed a petition before the High Court of Madras. But they lost there as well. Then they raised a lot of money and went to the Privy Council in London, but they could not get any relief. But in the 1920s, a significant temple entry movement started in different parts of the southern India, when it comes to Vaikom, when it comes to Tamil Nadu and other places. In fact, this gained significance because of the 1932 Pune Pact, which was signed by Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar. Because in 1909, when Morley Minto reforms were implemented, Muslims were given separate electorates called communal electorates, separate seats reserved for them where only Muslims could contest these elections. And it is argued that this policy of divide and rule, this policy of separate electorates or communal electorates ultimately paved way for the partition of this country in 1947, unfortunately on religious grounds. Then the separate electorates, communal electorates, were extended to other sections of the society as well, Christians for example. And then it was extended for the depressed classes as well, the Dalits as well, the so-called untouchables as well. This was heavily protested by Mahatma Gandhi, who said, we need to seek penance. We need to apologize to the Dalits because otherwise Hinduism will collapse. So he was against separate electorates for the Dalit community, for the depressed classes as they were called then. Ultimately, he went on fast unto death, and then Dr. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi, they came together, signed this Pune Pact, because of which the reservation of seats for the depressed classes increased, but there was no separate electorates, there was no communal electorate. And it was after this Pune Pact that Mahatma Gandhi started Harijan Sevak Sangh. And his principal objective was to ensure that we seek apology from the Dalit community because we have tortured them, and to ensure that other sections of the society, they are not against Dalits, they are not against temple entry, they are not practicing untouchability of any form. This is where Mahatma Gandhi has been criticized as well, because it is argued that Mahatma Gandhi did not believe in the caste system, but believed in the Varna system. So he wanted the division of labor amongst various sections of the society to continue, but he was against exploitation or discrimination on the grounds of caste. This is where Mahatma Gandhi was subjected to a lot of criticism, because he argued that Dalits should not force their entry into the temples unless and until the majority of the caste Hindus in their neighborhood allow their temple entry. So Mr. Gandhi was criticized because you are arguing, Mr. Gandhi, for civil disobedience against the mighty British Empire. So you want us to boycott British, their products? You want us to disobey? You want us to not pay taxes to the British government? But here, you are not asking for civil disobedience. You are asking for seeking permission of the caste Hindus, without which Dalits should not force their entry inside the temples. This is where a lot of historians have tried to justify and defend the Mahatma. They argued that the very reason that Mahatma Gandhi started this Harijan Sevak Sangh was because he could not get the support of his party men, which is the Congress. This is where he argued that Mahatma Gandhi's position was to ensure that in a non-violent manner and to ensure that Dalits are allowed entry inside the temples, we should do all this peacefully, without resorting to violence or without further perpetuating the caste atrocities that were committed at that time. But Mr. Gandhi was criticized because you are arguing for civil disobedience against the British, but not in the temple entry cases. There were people who said, for example, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who said that Mahatma Gandhi is going too slow when it comes to solving this menace of untouchability. And then there were the clergymen, then there were the priests who thought that Mahatma Gandhi is going too fast when it comes to resolving the conflicts amongst different communities. And then there were his own party men of the Congress party who were not supporting Mahatma Gandhi when it comes to solving this practice of untouchability. Historian Ramachandra Guha argues that for some, Mahatma Gandhi was too soft. For example, Dr. Ambedkar. For some, Mahatma Gandhi was too fast. For example, the priestly class. And for some within his own party, they did not support the Mahatma. Then in the year 1933, Hindu Temple Entry Disabilities Removal Bill was passed. And this was heavily criticized by Dr. Ambedkar. Although this bill, if it would have been passed, would have ensured that Dalits would be allowed entry inside the temples. Even then, Dr. Ambedkar criticized this bill, opposed this bill. Why? Because this bill mandated that Dalits can enter the temple only if there is a referendum conducted, and in that referendum, the majority of the caste Hindus allow the entry of Dalits inside the temple. And this is something that was not acceptable to Dr. Ambedkar. He said, this bill does not regard untouchability in temples as a sinful custom. It only regards untouchability as a social evil. So it is sinful. It is not a social evil only. And it is worst of all social evils. Sin and immorality cannot be tolerated because majority is addicted to them. So even if majority in that referendum do not allow Dalits entry inside the temple, that does not mean we should allow it, because sin and immorality cannot be accepted if it is adopted by the majority. But even then, after the enactment of the Constitution, if Article 17 says untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden, we are still witnessing the incidence of untouchability, reflecting a clash between constitutional objectives and the empirical reality. Reality seems to be something different. And this is not the one-off case where residents of this village in Thiruvallur in Tamil Nadu, they were denied entry. In fact, this temple was sealed and then reopened, because after all, this temple was under Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Department of the Tamil Nadu government. Since the land belongs to the state and the state cannot discriminate on the grounds of caste, ultimately talks were held, and through these peaceful talks, the Dalits were allowed entry inside the temple. The year was 2023, when in January, Dalits of a village in Kalakuruchi, they entered the Sri Varadaraja Perumal temple for the first time, despite the fact that this place was under the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Department. This temple had remained out of reach for Dalits up till this point in January 2023. So such examples you can cite in your answers if the question is asked on untouchability, particularly when it comes to your GS paper 1, which deals with the Society of India. That completes our discussion on topic number 1. Let's look at another topic. How do emergency provisions impact center-state relations? Constitution of India is considered to be federal, although the term often used for Indian Constitution is that it is quasi-federal. It has an element of federal polity, it has an element of the unitary polity. But there are some circumstances under which our federal polity changes its form and becomes a unitary constitution. That is why there are constitutional experts who say that Indian Constitution is amphibian in character, sometimes acting as a federal constitution, and when circumstances change, it changes its form and becomes a unitary constitution, which constitutions of other federal countries, such as Australia, such as United States, can never envisage. Their constitutions can never change their form and shape and turn unitary, but our constitution can. You would be aware of emergency provisions under Article 352. You are aware of the emergency provisions under Article 360, although we don't call it emergency, we call it financial emergency. So whenever the term emergency is used, you should assume that we are referring to Article 352. But then there is something called Article 355 of the Constitution and then Article 356. Article 355 imposes a duty on the union, on the central government, that the union government, you have a duty. You have to protect every state from external aggression, from internal disturbance, and you also have to ensure that governance in every state is carried out according to the provisions of the Constitution. Constitution is being respected in every state. This is the duty imposed by the Constitution on the Union under Article 355. But this is a duty, and you can't enforce your duty unless and until you have power to do something. So if Article 355 is imposed, does that mean center has some power under Article 355? That's something that we will discuss today. But when Article 356 is imposed, the government of that state is dismissed. The Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers, they are dismissed. The legislature of that state is kept under suspended animation. And the central government, the union government, takes control, takes charge of that state. What is happening here is the conflict in Manipur. If you look at the geography of Manipur, you can broadly divide Manipur into the valley and the hills. The valley is dominated by the Métis. And when it comes to the hills, they are dominated by the tribes. For example, Kukis. For example, Nagas. For example, Zo. Something happened last year in Manipur. What happened? Manipur High Court gave an order because Métis, some of them have SC status as well, some of them have OBC status as well, but there was a long pending demand by the Métis that we should be granted ST status, scheduled tribe status. Kukis already have the ST status. So if more communities are granted ST status, which basically means now Kukis will have to compete with the Métis, and it might adversely affect the Kukis. Ultimately, there was this conflict. But Manipur High Court directed the state that within 1 month of the receipt of the order, you should consider granting ST status to Métis because that was their long pending demand. This was seen as a trigger, which ultimately triggered clashes between Métis and Kukis, and that is what is happening in Manipur right now. Wanton destruction, no law and order, unfortunate loss of lives of civilians and policemen as well, and there is chaos, instability in Manipur. Matter then went to the Supreme Court as well, and Supreme Court wondered why nobody showed the Constitution bench judgment in the case of Milind versus State of Maharashtra way back in 2000, where a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court had said that no court in this country, no tribunal, no state government has the power to grant ST status to anybody or even SC status to anybody, because that power lies with the center. So basically, Parliament will have to pass a bill, and through that bill, Métis should have been included into the ST list. Then this bill should have been signed by the President. Then President would have notified the SC/ST order of 1950, because that is the order of 1950 which mentions all the SCs and STs in this country who are granted protection. So who could have granted ST status to Métis? Not the state government, and that too not on the orders of the High Court of Manipur, but only the center. When Parliament would have passed a bill, that bill would have been signed by the President president would have notified the order and would have mentioned that Metis are now scheduled tribes. Supreme Court wondered why nobody showed the Manipur High Court this order of the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court in 2000 in Milind versus State of Maharashtra, where the Supreme Court had categorically stated that no state government, no court, no tribunal has the power to grant SC/ST status to anybody. That power lies with the centre. And later on, Manipur High Court also recalled this order. That order wherein it had directed the state government that you should expeditiously consider granting ST status to Metis within 1 month of the receipt of this order. Although some people argued that Manipur High Court did not ask state government to give ST status to Metis. Manipur High Court asked the state government to take this matter with the centre and get it done by 1 month. But even then, it was beyond the pay grade of the Manipur High Court. And unfortunately now there is a conflict between the Metis and Kukis when it comes to Manipur. Even then, Manipur has not been placed under President's rule under Article 356. Why? Critics argue that it is because the same political party is in power in Manipur and the same party is in power at the centre. If it was a different political party in power in the state, then the centre would have invoked Article 356 and dismissed the state government. But listen to me carefully. In matters as sensitive as this conflict between Metis and Kukis, I don't know who is right, who is wrong. Whether Metis are right or Kukis are right. Who is killing whom? Who is more atrocious? We can only rely on the newspaper reports coming from Manipur, where majority of these newspaper reports are sympathetic towards the Kukis and not against the Metis. But that does not mean that all the Metis are at fault. We don't know what is happening in Manipur. So that is something that disclaimer is very important. When Article 356 was debated in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Ambedkar hoped that this article would remain a dead letter. It will never be invoked. But then one of the most used, overused, abused, hyperused articles of the Indian Constitution is Article 356, imposed more than 110 times in India, and for a variety of reasons. Parliamentary election took place, a new political party has come to power at the centre, and if a different political party is in power in the state, that state government was dismissed under Article 356. Why? Because when the election has taken place, this political party has lost the parliamentary election. That means you don't have the right to continue governing the state. There were corruption allegations against a minister, Article 356 was imposed. There was law and order breakdown in the state, Article 356 was imposed. And this misuse of Article 356 was curtailed when a landmark judgment was given by the Supreme Court in S.R. Bommai versus Union of India, where Supreme Court made it clear that imposition of Article 356 is subject to judicial review. And there is a difference between breakdown of law and order and breakdown of constitutional machinery. What is the breakdown of law and order? If a political party has come to power, but they had promised something in their election manifesto, but now this political party is unable to fulfill its election manifesto, and there are protests by the people, that is breakdown of law and order. That's not the breakdown of constitutional machinery. But when the riots took place in Madhya Pradesh, for example, after the demolition of the Babri Masjid, and the Madhya Pradesh government was dismissed under Article 356, Supreme Court said this is a correct implication, correct imposition of Article 356. Why? Because secularism, which is part of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, has been violated because there have been riots between the two communities. So the court made it clear that there is a difference between breakdown of law and order and breakdown of constitutional machinery. But that was specific to Article 356. What about Article 355? Where a duty has been imposed on the centre that you have to protect every state from internal disturbance and from external aggression, and at the same time ensure that governance in every state is carried out according to the provisions of the Constitution. Manipur is under Article 355. which means their law and order is under the control of the center, despite the fact that law and order is a state subject under the distribution of powers under 7th schedule of the Constitution. Whether it is the Sarkaria Commission of 1987, whether of 1985, whether it is the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution of 2002, Venkatacharya Commission, or whether it is the Punchi Commission of 2007. In all these cases, in all these commissions have said that under Article 355, there is not only the duty on the center, there is also the power available with the center, that you can take over the law and order situation in a state if there is a danger in that state, whether from external enemy or from internal disturbance. Only when this Article 355 fails, even then if you are not in a position to take control of the situation, then as the last resort, you should go for Article 356, dismiss the government and let the state be governed directly by the center. So Article 355 not only imposes a duty on the center, but also imposes and gives power to the center that you have to take charge to ensure that law and order is maintained, the security of the state is maintained in Manipur. But even with Article 355, we do not see stability in the security situation in Manipur. Let's see what happens in the coming days. That's about this chapter, this topic number 2, how do emergency provisions impact center-state relations? Now let's come to a column written by Mr. Prashant Bhushan and Cheryl D'Souza, Indian military export to Israel, aiding genocide. I think it was October 7, 2023, when a terrorist outfit, Hamas, crossed the Gaza-Israeli border and killed Israeli civilians. Hundreds of them, close to 256, 300, were taken hostages, which includes women, children, elderly as well. Then in response, Israel launched an all-out war on Israel. Israel launched an all-out war on Hamas, not just to free these hostages, but also to teach a lesson to this terrorist outfit that you cannot inflict damage on us. But in this process, this war seems not to be ending anytime soon. It seems to be a never-ending war. During this process, Israel has been accused of committing genocide. And what is this genocide? According to the United Nations Genocide Convention of 1948, if you are doing any act, and through this act you want to destroy a national, an ethnic, a racial, or a religious group, whether completely or partially, you are committing genocide. Whether you are imposing bodily harm on this group, you are committing genocide. Whether you want to or you are preventing births within that group, you are committing genocide. Who says this? The Genocide Convention of 1948. And it was argued that since Israel is using airstrikes against even hospitals as well, so basically you are preventing births within this community, within this group called the Palestinians, you are committing genocide. South Africa and various other countries approached the International Court of Justice. An International Court of Justice gave its judgment, which is an advisory judgment in that case because it's not binding on Israel. Because any judgment of International Court of Justice, if you want to enforce it, for that you have to take security measures, which means you may have to send United Nations peacekeeping troops. But for that requires the approval of the United Nations Security Council, where United States has a veto power. And United States and Israel, they are close allies. And United States has employed veto in numerous instances to protect, safeguard and save Israel. But despite that, the International Court of Justice ruled that the occupation of the Palestinian territory by Israel is unlawful. And all the states, all the countries, they have to effectively take steps to stop aiding Israel in perpetuating this genocide. And how can you aid Israel in perpetuating this genocide? By selling military equipment to Israel. This is where a Hague Court of Appeal, they asked the Dutch government that you should not sell parts of F-35 to Israel because they might use these F-35 aircraft to launch attacks on the Palestinian lands and further commit genocide. There was another important ruling of International Court of Justice when it comes to this Nicaragua versus Germany. And the International Court of Justice had specifically stated that it is important that we remind all the states that you have international obligations. If you have signed and ratified this international convention against genocide, then it is your obligation. We need to remind you that you have to stop aiding Israel. And this is how countries such as United Kingdom, this is how countries such as Canada, countries such as Spain, they have stopped giving licenses to those companies who are sending military equipment to Israel. Former bureaucrats, academicians, activists filed a petition before the Supreme Court of India, which the Supreme Court of India dismissed. But what was this petition? Ashok Kumar Sharma and others versus Union of India. What was the petition? My lord, there are private companies and there are government companies in India who are selling military equipment to Israel, which Israel is using to commit genocide in Palestine. We have a prayer, and the prayer is the central government should stop, suspend these licenses and not renew these licenses to those private companies and public companies, government companies, which are selling equipment, military equipment to Israel. And the Supreme Court dismissed this petition. On what grounds? Ground number one, Supreme Court said, you are filing this petition against a sovereign country called Israel, which is not a party before us. So how can we issue a directive, since Israel is not a party to this case? Prashant Bhushan argues that this was a wrong interpretation by the Supreme Court. Why? Because the petition did not ask the Supreme Court to issue directive against Israel. Clearly, Israel is not a party to this case. But the petition was not asking the Supreme Court to issue a directive to Israel. We are only asking for a directive to the central government of India. And the Supreme Court has the power over the central government. Judicial review, that you should suspend and not renew the licenses of those private and public companies who are selling military equipment to Israel. Argument given by Prashant Bhushan is that in various Supreme Court judgments previously, the Supreme Court had made it clear that if India is a signatory to some international conventions, if India is signatory to some international conventions or treaties or peace pacts, we have to interpret our domestic law keeping in mind our international obligations. India has signed this United Nations Convention Against Genocide in 1949. India has ratified this convention in 1959. So since India is a party to this convention, we have to ensure that our domestic laws are in agreement with the international agreements, according to Mr. Prashant Bhushan. Second, why did the Supreme Court reject this petition? Supreme Court said, if we will ask the central government to suspend or not renew the licenses of those companies which are selling military equipment to Israel, which means these companies will not be then able to sell equipments to Israel. But maybe they were in a contract. So if you're not honoring your contract, maybe penalties will be imposed on you. That is why we should not interfere. But Prashant Bhushan argues that in this case, we can always claim force majeure. What is that? For example, you have an insurance policy. And this insurance policy can protect you against accidents, accidental fire, your property, for example. But it will not protect you against the act of God. For example, there is an earthquake, and maybe, this is just a hypothetical example, maybe your property is not protected against such disasters. The act of God, something which you can't control. That's called force majeure. For example, if Israel is accused and guilty of genocide, these companies can always claim force majeure, saying since you are committing genocide and war, this is an unseen situation. When we were in a contract with you, there was no war. Now that there is war and you are accused of genocide and you have been convicted as well, now this is a force which will force us to come out of this contract. And nobody can force you to pay penalty for violating this contract because something else has happened. Prashant Bhushan argues that even the central government could claim force majeure, saying when this contract was signed, there was no war, there was no genocide. But now since there is no liability on us if we have violated this contract. Argument number 3 given by the Supreme Court was that how to deal with Israel or how to deal with Israel-Hamas conflict. This is under the policy domain of the union government, because external affairs is under the control, under the domain of the union government. And in such policy matters, there is limited scope of judicial review. We cannot direct the central government how to carry out foreign policy. This was the argument by the court, but Prashant Bhushan disagrees. Prashant Bhushan says this is like a self-imposing restraint. Supreme Court has imposed restraint on itself and is not getting involved in the foreign policy matters. Then what is the scope of judicial review? Supreme Court has held that if India has international obligations and you are not following them, then it basically means we will have to interfere. So on all these 3 fronts, Mr. Prashant Bhushan and Ms. Cheryl D'Souza disagree with the Supreme Court. That is what you need to keep in mind while reading this particular article. Now let's look at something else. Why is Tamil Nadu's education funding on hold? There is a centrally sponsored scheme called Samagra Shiksha, which deals with kids from preschool, nursery to class 12th. When the scheme was launched, it subsumed 3 other schemes. Which are these schemes? Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, and the teacher education. All these 3 schemes were subsumed under Samagra Shiksha. Any investment in the scheme, since it's a centrally sponsored scheme, 60% will be contributed by the center, 40% will have to be contributed by the states. And even that 60% contribution, which is by the center, will be given to states in installments. There was a due, and that due was close to a quarterly due of 573 crore, which the central government had to pay to the Tamil Nadu government, but it has been put on hold. Why? Tamil Nadu alleges, although central government disagrees, but Tamil Nadu alleges that central government is forcing us to do 2 things. And if we abide by those 2 things, these funds will be released. Otherwise, they will be kept on hold. Which are these 2 things? The central government wants Tamil Nadu government, according to Tamil Nadu government, that you should sign an undertaking, a memorandum of understanding on PM Shri, What is PM Shri? Pradhan Mantri Schools for Rising India. This scheme will run from 2022 to 2027. What is the objective of this scheme? Objective of the scheme is that we want to make model schools. Close to 14,500 model schools will be established in this country. Model schools which others can replicate, which other schools can replicate, that this is a school which focuses on what? It focuses on audio-visual aids in learning. It focuses on extracurricular activities. It focuses on upgraded laboratories in the schools. It focuses on full development of the children. So central government wants Tamil Nadu government to sign this memorandum of understanding to implement this PM Shri scheme and to implement new National Education Policy 2020. And there were two contentious issues in this new National Education Policy according to Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has had a long history of anti-Hindi agitation. Tamil, which is one of the classical languages in India, beautiful, classical, very old language. It has its own history, which is rich. Tamil Nadu was always against anti-Hindi, was always against Hindi. They always have held anti-Hindi demonstrations, whether it is prior to independence or even after that. If Constitution says that the official language of the Union shall be Hindi in Devanagari script, and Constitution further said that this official language Hindi, we will continue to use English, but for 15 years. That means from 1950 to 1965. After that, English will disappear. Only Hindi will remain the only official language of the Union. As this deadline neared in 1960, there were protests against Hindi imposition. And you know the history about it. Long story short, a law was passed called Official Languages Act of 1963. And this law says, now we will have English as well as Hindi as the official language of the Union without any upper limit. Because Constitution had imposed an upper limit that English can be used as the official language for 15 years. After that, only Hindi will be the official language of the Union. But now this law, Official Languages Act of 1963, it says Hindi and English will be the official language of the Union without upper limit. There is no 15-year, 20-year, 30-year limit. Now there can be a question on your mind. Sir, how can a law passed by the Parliament violate the Constitution? If the Constitution says English should be used only for 15 years, how can a law override Constitution and say you can use English forever and ever and ever? Because Constitution said the official language of the Union shall be Hindi in Devanagari script, but for 15 years English can be used. And even the continuation of English can continue further basis the law passed by the Parliament. So if Parliament passes a law by simple majority, it can further extend the use of English as the official language of the Union. And Parliament did that in 1963. But in response to that, a 3-language formula was implemented. What is this 3-language formula? It was argued that in southern India, Hindi is not spoken, Hindi is not understood. How can we popularize Hindi in the southern states? For that, 3-language formula has to be implemented. For children studying in the schools, local language should be taught, English should be taught, and a local Indian language should be taught, an Indian language should be taught. So it was argued that in southern India we will promote Hindi. So for example, in Tamil Nadu, Tamil will be taught to kids, English will be taught, and Hindi will be taught, so that Hindi can be promoted and popularized in the non-Hindi speaking areas. And in the northern India, where these beautiful classical languages, South Indian languages, they are not spoken, they are not understood. How can we even promote these beautiful South Indian languages in the northern India? For that, even in northern India, the kids should be taught 3 languages: Hindi, English, and preferably a South Indian language. But this 3 language formula was not effectively implemented throughout the country. For example, if it was thought that one South Indian language will be taught as a 3rd language in northern India, Sanskrit was popularized, not a South Indian language. And in southern India, for example in Tamil Nadu, they only followed 2 language formula, English and Tamil. No other language, no Hindi, because they were against Hindi. Now the new national education policy, it is also talking about 3 language formula, saying English can be taught to the kids, but 2 other Indian languages should also be taught, which means Tamil and maybe Hindi. Tamil Nadu is not in favor of that, and that is what is leading to an impasse between centre and Tamil Nadu. And that is what is leading to the holding of these funds which were to be released in favor of Tamil Nadu, according to Tamil Nadu government, not me. I'm just reading the newspaper. There is another contentious issue. For example, the controversy surrounding NEET. Tamil Nadu was vehemently opposing NEET. The Tamil Nadu government argues that entry or admission into colleges after 12th should be based on the marks that one scores in 11th and 12th, not on the basis of any entrance test. But the new national education policy, it embraces and it talks about a test. Similarly, when it comes to the new national education policy, it focuses on 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. 5 years in foundational for those in the age group of 3 to 8. 3 years when it comes to preparatory. In the age group of 8 to 11. 3 years for middle school in the age group of 11 to 14. And then 4 years when it comes to secondary for those in the age group of 14 to 18, which includes classes from 9 to 12. So this is something which is recommended by the new national education policy. Tamil Nadu, on the other hand, it wants 5 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2. 5 as foundational, 3 as preparatory, 2 in the middle and 2 in the secondary. They want to retain their autonomy. And that is what is leading to conflict between the centre and the state. And in fact, admission into the school, Tamil Nadu says, should be at the age of 5. The new national education policy says at the age of 6. So there is a lot of to and fro, back and forth happening between the Tamil Nadu government and the central government, and that is leading to this education funding being kept on hold. Long story short, there is Samagra Shiksha. When it was launched, it subsumed 3 other programs. For example, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. For example, the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan and the teacher education. This is a centrally sponsored scheme where 60% of the funds will be given by the centre, 40% are to be raised by the states. But this 60% contribution by the centre will be given to the states in installments. As the first quarter installment of close to 573 crores, Yes, 573 crores that was to be given by the central government to Tamil Nadu government, it has been put on hold. Tamil Nadu government says it is because we have not agreed with the center on two things, on national education policy, new national education policy implementation, and on PM Shri. Although a memorandum of understanding was signed between the Tamil Nadu government and the central government on PM Shri, where the idea is to develop 14,500 model schools in different parts of the country. And this program will run between 2022 and 2027. Although Tamil Nadu government and the central government have agreed and signed memorandum of understanding on this, but there is still pressing issue on the new national education policy. Tamil Nadu government wants 5 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2 education policy. Tamil Nadu government does not want to implement 3-language formula. Tamil Nadu government wants admission into the colleges after 12th should be based on the marks that you obtain in 11th and 12th, not on the basis of the tests. And Tamil Nadu government says entry inside the school, admission into the school should be at the age of 5, which the new national education policy recommends at the age of 6. Let's see what will happen in future in this conflict between the center and the state. Now let's look at another editorial, clarity of vision. I'll manufacture a drug and will market it and advertise it, saying this is the drug, this is the only tablet that you have to swallow to get rid of AIDS. So what I'm advertising, some magic powers of this drug. This is a tablet Coronil. You consume it and there won't be COVID-19 affecting you. Magic. There is this eye drop which you can use and then you don't need glasses. I wish somebody could give me that drug, although I like wearing glasses as well, but so that I can get rid of my glasses. Although there will be companies, there will be pharmaceutical companies which will market it like that, but it is misleading advertisement. And it is for this reason that in 1954, a law was passed called Drugs and Magic Remedies, Objectionable Advertisements Act 1954. And last week, this act has been invoked. Why? A company manufacturing an eye drop advertised, marketed the magical powers of this eye drop, saying those who are suffering from presbyopia. Where is it mentioned here? Presbyopia. And what is this presbyopia? Basically, as the age progresses, normally you factor it at the age of 40 and then your vision deteriorates and then you are unable to focus on the nearby objects, which primarily means that you will have to wear glasses. This company says, we have manufactured an eye drop which if you use twice or thrice in a day, all those who are suffering from presbyopia, they don't have to wear glasses. Magical powers. And then the central government, it withdrew this Entod Pharmaceuticals. The approval which was given to this drug was revoked and they cannot further manufacture this drug, this eye drop. Why? Because your advertisements are misleading. This particular eye drop used pilocarpine, which you can use on the pupil. So basically, because of this drug, what happens when this eye drop will use pilocarpine, what it will do, when you use these eye drops, your pupil will contract, there will be some sort of a tunneling vision which take place, and ultimately you will be able to focus on the objects, because previously you were not able to focus on the objects. And this is not something magical which has been invented by Entod Pharmaceuticals. This pilocarpine had been long used for glaucoma. Normally when the optical fibers of your eye, they get damaged, and because of some underlying medical conditions, for example, diabetes is one of the most important reasons for damaging the optical nerve fibers, then it leads to either low vision or blindness or loss of vision altogether. So this pilocarpine, which this Enrolment Pharmaceuticals had said we are using in these eye drops, it is not something that was used for the first time. In fact, it has been used to treat glaucoma for a long period of time. But United States, the US FDA, the drugs authority, Federal Drugs Authority in United States, they have long stopped using this pilocarpine. Why? Because of its side effects. Side effects can be nausea, side effect can be diarrhea, side effect can be shivering, trembling. So without telling the people that there will be these side effects, without telling the people that you will still need to use the glasses, you cannot completely get rid of the glasses by consuming this eye drop, by using this eye drop manufactured by Enrolment Pharmaceuticals. This amounts to misleading advertisements, this amounts to objectionable advertisement, this amounts to popularizing magical remedies, which is violation of the law passed by the Parliament in 1954. But even this law has been subjected to a lot of criticism. Why? Because the law was passed in 1954. Under this law, there were close to 54, we can say, diseases or conditions. Basically, the purpose of this act is you cannot advertise something, advertise a cure or a drug or a remedy for some diseases or ailments mentioned in this law. And there were 54 such items. Out of that, 14 have already been cured. AIDS is not mentioned as one of the conditions. That is the criticism against this law in 1954. But be that as it may, what is the purpose? Clarity of vision. A useful drug is undone by fantastic claims about its efficacy. A pharmaceutical company got the approval of an eye drop which can be used by those suffering from presbyopia. And what is presbyopia? A condition which affects elderly people. You start noticing the symptoms at the age of 40, and gradually the symptoms proliferate, the conditions worsen, and you are unable to focus on the nearby objects, for which you will have to then start wearing the glasses. Now, the magical claim by this company was, if you use this eye drop, you don't have to start wearing the eyeglasses, without telling the people what are the side effects, misleading the people that this may not be entirely true, talking about a component of this drug, of this eye drop, pilocarpine, which has not been used only for the first time, it has been used to treat glaucoma for a long time. All this is misleading, and this is objectionable advertisement, which is prohibited by the law passed by the Parliament in 1954. Clear? Let's look at something else. As Kejriwal makes a risky gambit, records show placeholders usually warm to the chair. Mr. Kejriwal, as the Delhi Chief Minister, presided over a policy called Delhi Excise Policy, which is also known as the Delhi Excise Policy scam, which you are aware of it. I have discussed that in one of my videos. The video is available on our YouTube channel. The title is Bail in PMLA Cases. All important judgments I have discussed in one video. So long story short, Mr. Kejriwal was accused in this case but released. While he was in jail, he still continued to be the Chief Minister. He did not resign. But now, in a surprise move, after he was released on bail, he said, I am going to resign, which means someone else will be appointed as the Chief Minister. And this is only going to be for short period. Why? Because in next year, in 2025, elections are going to be conducted in Delhi. And Mr. Kejriwal says, if people vote for me overwhelmingly, they want me to be the Chief Minister again, then I will occupy this post of the Chief Minister, otherwise no. Because I'm fighting a legal battle, I will also fight a battle amongst the court of the public. And if they want me back as the chief minister, I will be. But in such cases, these chief ministers, they normally appoint a loyalist as the chief minister, who will keep the chair warm, so that once this individual is back, you will come down from the chair and occupy and give this, hand over this warm chair to the individual, to this charismatic leader. But whenever it was done in history, we have seen mixed results. Not everybody is like O. Paneerselvam, Tamil Nadu, who was once an important leader of AIADMK, which was governed by the charismatic leader J. Jayalalitha. When she was arrested in disproportionate assets case way back in 2001, 2002, she was the chief minister, but she handed over this chief minister's chair to O. Paneerselvam. You occupy this seat because I know you are my loyalist. You will not become too habituated to the seat, so that once I'm released, I can come back and occupy the seat. He did this twice when J. Jayalalitha was arrested in different cases. And whenever Miss Jayalalitha would come back from the jail, he would step down and hand over this chief minister's chair to his leader. But this happened when this did not happen when Mr. Nitish Kumar, he came out of the NDA in 2013. And then in Lok Sabha election, he faced a drubbing. He took responsibility, resigned, and asked Jitan Ram Manji to become the chief minister. He thought, he's my loyalist, I don't fear him, he's not threatening to me. He will keep my chair warm so that I can come back at any time and occupy the seat. But Mr. Jitan Ram became too comfortable in his chair, and he had to be ultimately removed. He then formed his own political party, Hindustan Awami Morcha. And that is what? Jo simhasan par baitha ho, wahi Vikramaditya hai. He who occupies the throne is wise, is Vikramaditya. Because this throne will accord wisdom to anybody who occupies it. Mr. Hemant Soren of Jharkhand, as the chief minister, he was also arrested. He resigned as the chief minister, then got arrested, but he asked his loyalist, Mr. Champai Soren, to become the chief minister, thinking that he will keep my seat warm so that whenever I am released, I can occupy it. But he could not keep it warm for Hemant Soren. Although Hemant Soren returned as the chief minister, but then Mr. Champai Soren resigned and joined the BJP. Mr. Kejriwal will need to ponder hard over his replacement and to ensure that replacement does not supplant him as the leader of the Aam Aadmi Party, a task that has challenged best of the political minds so far. Clear? Let's look at some of the prelims-based facts. Himachal Pradesh Rajya Sabha poll, High Court refuses to reject Singhvi's petition. There was one vacancy in the Rajya Sabha from the state of Himachal Pradesh. One person had to be elected, one MP had to be elected. Since Rajya Sabha elections take place through proportional representation system, and since in the 90-member Legislative Assembly, the Congress was comfortable at 40 seats, it was argued that the nominee of the Congress party, who was Abhishek Manu Singhvi, will be elected to the Rajya Sabha. But then came a surprise. Mr. Harsh Mahajan, who was in Congress, resigned, joined the BJP and contested Rajya Sabha elections. Rajya Sabha elections are normally conducted unopposed. In fact, Rajya Sabha elections are not conducted because all these candidates, they win unopposed. Because if a political party knows that I don't have sufficient number of MLAs to get my party nominee elected to Rajya Sabha, I won't set up a candidate. So normally, election does not take place, the candidates win unopposed. But here, since Mr. Mahajan joined the fray, election took place. And now what happened? There was a tie. Both Abhishek Manu Singhvi and Mr. Mahajan got same number of votes. In this case, who will be the member of the parliament? In this case, there is a tiebreaker. Tiebreaker in the sense, I am the returning officer. Why am I called the returning officer? Because I return the winner. If there is a tie, I will use draw of lots. Draw of lots in the sense that I will mention the name of Mr. Mahajan, Mr. Singhvi in two different chits, and then pick one and then decide who is going to be the winner. The returning officer declared Mr. Mahajan as the winner. Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi filed a petition in the High Court, and now the case is going on. In fact, Mr. Mahajan had requested that this case be dismissed, but High Court did not agree with this and did not reject this petition of Mr. Singhvi. Now, from the prelims point of view, there are three things that you have to keep in mind. What are the three things? Number one, anti-defection law. What in anti-defection law? Normally, if a whip is issued by the political party, it's binding on the members of that political party. And if the members violate the whip issued by the political party, these members are disqualified under the anti-defection law, right? Yes. In case of Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, 6 members of the Congress party voted against him. Shouldn't those 6 MLAs be disqualified under anti-defection law? No. Why? Because Rajya Sabha election is not covered under the proceedings of the House. What does that mean, proceedings of the House? If within the proceedings of the House you violate the whip issued by the political party, you will be disqualified. What is the proceeding? If you are not voting in favor of that bill, if you are not voting in favor of that motion, so on and so forth. So something that you are doing within the House, which can be called as the proceedings of the House, for example, bills, for example, motions, for example, vote of thanks on governor's address. If you violate the whip in these cases, you will be disqualified. But in Rajya Sabha election, these MLAs vote to elect the MP, but that voting is not deemed as proceedings of the House. If it is not deemed as proceedings of the House, that means whip is not binding in case of Rajya Sabha election. So these 6 MLAs were not disqualified for violating anti-defection law because of not voting in favor of Abhishek Manu Singhvi. But sir, I have a question. What? Sir, but these 6 MLAs were disqualified. Yes. Sir, these MLAs were disqualified under anti-defection law. Yes. But not for not voting for Abhishek Manu Singhvi. They were disqualified because they did not vote in favor of the budget, in favor of the money bill passed by the Himachal Pradesh Legislative Assembly. And since passing a bill is the proceeding of the House, since these 6 MLAs did not follow the directive, did not follow the whip issued by the political party, since they violated whip during the proceedings of the House, they were disqualified. That is number one. Number two, if there is a dispute in case of Rajya Sabha election, this dispute can be filed in the High Court of the state concerned, not directly in the Supreme Court. That is fact number 2 relevant for prelims. And third, what is this tiebreaker? And what is this petition before the court? Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi argues that the returning officer should have followed Section 65 of the Representation of the People Act 1951. For example, in Lok Sabha elections, if you are also contesting, I am also contesting, and then there is a tie. You get 1 lakh votes, I get 1 lakh votes. Now, who is the winner? The returning officer will mention your name, my name on chits, and then pick one chit. Whichever name appears, it is as if the returning officer has cast an extra vote in his favor. So, if the returning officer picks the chit and my name appears, it means an additional vote has been cast in my favor, which means now it is 1 lakh 1 for me, 1 lakh for you, which means I am the winner. That means whichever name appears, additional vote is cast in her favor or in his favor. But in case of Himachal Pradesh Rajya Sabha election, the presiding officer followed Section 81 of the Election Conduct Rules of 1961. which says returning officer will decide how to draw the chit and who will get the extra vote and who will be excluded. In this case, the returning officer mentioned the names of Mr. Mahajan, Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, and extracted a chit, draw of lot. And in that lot, the name of Abhishek Manu Singhvi appeared. Abhishek Manu Singhvi smiled, said, "I'm the winner." Said, "No. In this case, because it's a Rajya Sabha election, if I draw a lot and the name which appears, it means extra vote has been cast, not in your favor, but in the other candidate's favor. That means if your name appears in the chit, you're not the winner. The other person is the winner." But the language of section 65 is clear. If after the, read with me carefully, if after the counting of votes is completed, an equality of votes is found to exist between any candidates, the addition of one vote will entitle one of those candidates to be declared winner. The returning officer shall forthwith decide by lot and proceed as if the candidate on whom the lot falls had received an additional vote. Section 65 is clear. But election conduct rule is slightly vague. It says returning officer will decide whom to exclude, whom to declare a winner. Returning officer declared that in this case, Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, you are the loser because the lot fell on you, but you are the loser. The lot did not fell on the Harsh Mahajan's name, he is the winner. And now, the Himachal Pradesh High Court will have to decide whether the returning officer should have followed section 65 or should have followed Rule 81 Clause 3 of the Election Conduct Rules 1961. Let's wait and watch. Let's look at another prelims-based concept. Campaign concludes for the first phase of polls in J&K. The Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory is witnessing an election after 10 years, and this election will be conducted in 3 phases. We don't need to remember how many phases, how many constituencies, but what we need to remember is a period of election silence. What is this period of election silence? Under the Representation of the People Act, section 126, if the voting takes place on, let's say, Wednesday, and the voting ends Wednesday 6 p.m. Wednesday 6 p.m, go backwards and calculate 48 hours. 48 hours before the end of the polling. That is the period of election silence. And in this period, no election campaign can take place. No rallies can take place. No election propaganda can take place. And if a political party's candidate violates this provision, then you are punishable with imprisonment, which may extend to 2 years, with fine or both. But the critics argue that it remains enforced on the ground, but not virtually. Not virtually in the sense, Election Commission of India has failed to ensure that this election silence period is enforced virtually on digital platforms. For example, there are geotagged ads. For example, if I have to launch an ad on YouTube or Twitter, X or Facebook or Instagram or Google, I can make it geography based. That means this ad should be displayed only in Karnataka. Or I can make it further squeezed only in Bengaluru. I can make it further squeezed only for those in the age group of 18 to 65. Since this geotagged based advertisements digitally on Meta, on Alphabet, on social media, Election Commission of India has failed to prevent and enforce this period of election silence under section 126. Let's look at something else. Scientists seek transparency in Vigyan Puraskar selection process. Shanti Swaroop Bhatnagar, he is considered to be the first chairperson of the University Grants Commission, considered to be the first Director General of CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. And in his name, in 1958, an award was launched called Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Science, given to scientists who have made glorious contributions in different fields of science. And every such winner would get a 5 lakh rupees, would get 15,000 rupees per month if till the time you are in the government service. So basically you get a beautiful trophy, you get a 5 lakh rupees check, you get 15,000 per month as honorarium till the time you are in government service. This was Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize. And Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, he had studied in Europe, and then in 1921 he had come back to India and joined Banaras Hindu University as the professor of chemistry. And in fact he also wrote Kulgeet, which is the anthem of the Banaras Hindu University, that too in Hindi language. Fantastic person. In his honor, in his name, Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize was constituted in 1958. But now this Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, which was considered to be the highest prize in science, is no longer the highest. Why? Because just like Padma Awards in India, where we have Bharat Ratna at the top, Padma Vibhushan, Padma Bhushan, Padma Shri, similar Ratna Awards have been constituted for science as well. Since when? Since 2024. Called Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar. And it will be given to scientists in 4 categories. Vigyan Ratna, which is the highest award, which is given to any person who has made lifetime contribution in the field of science and technology. Then comes Vigyan Shri. This is given to scientists who have contributed to various 13 fields of science and technology. Then we have Vigyan Yuva, and this is Vigyan Yuva Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize. So Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, which used to be the top prize, has now been relegated into a 3rd prize. And this is given to those scientists who are less than the age of 45. And the last one is Vigyan Team, a group of 3 scientists or more who have come together for any scientific development. For example, this year it was given to those scientists, 3 scientists who successfully landed Chandrayaan 3 near the south pole of the moon, south side of the moon, the far side of the moon. So you have to take care of, you have to understand this Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar. You also have to look at that these come into 4 different awards. Now what is the controversy? The controversy is that some of the group of eminent scientists, all of whom were the recipients of the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, they have sought a clarification. Whether this Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar, whether it is given fairly or not, whether all this process, selection process, is fully transparent or fair. Because what's the difference between Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar and the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize? The difference is that Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize was given by CSIR. Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar is given by the government. The difference is that this Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, panel of scientists were set up who would individually look at what different scientists in different fields have done, and ultimately they will select a group of people, group of scientists, and they will recommend to the CSIR, and CSIR will hand over the prize to them. So argument is that it was a fair selection process. But now under Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar, there will be Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar Committee, which will be headed by the principal scientific advisor to the government. And then this Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar committee will constitute advisory committees. And then these advisory committees will look at the contribution of various scientists and ultimately recommend name to the science minister. And then the government will announce this prize. The controversy erupted because some of the recommendations of this committee, they were not given this prize. Why? Because it is alleged that they have been critical of some of the policies and the programs of the government. And now in this backdrop, a group of scientists who all have been the recipients of the award, Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, they are asking for clarification whether these awards are given transparently or not, considering all the facts or not. That's something that you need to know from this topic. Let's look at the last topic for the day. After hectic negotiations, BJP concedes chair of 4 House panels to the Congress. The year was 1993. 17 departmentally related standing committees were established. Then in 2004, the number shot up to 24. So now we have 24 departmentally related standing committees. What is their basic job? The job is all the demands for grants, because when the budget is introduced, when the appropriation bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha, and then basically appropriation bill consists of demands that the various departments and ministries demand from the parliament, that please vote on these demands so that we can spend this money. Examining all these demands for grants is the job of these departmentally related standing committees. Or if there is a bill which can be referred to this committee, which is under its subject, for example, a departmentally related standing committee on health and nutrition or health and family welfare, will take a look at, will review a bill which is on health matters, if it is referred to it by the parliament. Although the reports of these departmentally related standing committees, these are advisory in nature, but yet they carry enormous power, because in these departmentally related standing committees, the members do not have to toe their party line. They have to be independent in their functioning. They can easily criticize even their own government. And sometimes the recommendations of these departmentally related standing committees have been incorporated in the bills as well. Each departmentally related standing committee consists of 31 members, 21 from Lok Sabha, 10 from the Rajya Sabha. Of these 24 departmentally related standing committees, 8 are under the control of the Rajya Sabha chairman, and the remaining 14 or 16 are under the control of the secretariat of the Lok Sabha. Which are these departmentally related standing committees? 24 departmentally related standing committees, 21 from Lok Sabha, 31 members in total, 10 from Rajya Sabha. No minister can be appointed. The term is for 1 year. And these first 8 committees, they are under Rajya Sabha chairperson, and the remaining are under the Lok Sabha chairperson. All these members are nominated. Rajya Sabha members are nominated by the Rajya Sabha chairman. Lok Sabha members are nominated by the Lok Sabha speaker. Which is different from financial committees that we have. Because we have 3 financial committees: Committee on Public Sector Undertakings, Committee on Estimates, Committee on Public Accounts Committee. Here the members are elected. Members are elected by Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, but here only Lok Sabha, because Estimates Committee is considered to be the continuous economy committee, one of the biggest committees of the parliament. It has 30 members. And recently, the head of the Public Accounts Committee The chairman of the Public Accounts Committee is Mr. K.C. Venugopal, who is the leader, who is the Lok Sabha MP of belonging to the Congress, because there is a convention that the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee has to be from the opposition. Clear? But something else. In 2014, Congress had just they were the chairperson of the parliamentary committees on external affairs and finance. But this time they have negotiated and they were asking for external affairs, finance, defense, home, but they might get, according to newspaper reports, external affairs, agriculture, rural development and education. But we don't have to remember who gets what. The larger issue is, this is for prelims, these facts. The chairperson of these committees is selected by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha or the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. And the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha, they are meant to be constitutionally independent. They have to look at what is the strength of a political party in the parliament and accordingly assign members to this committee or the chairperson of this committee. But here Congress is negotiating with the government, with the Union Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, and the Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs, Mr. Arun Ram Meghwal, leading these discussions on the side of the government. So why should government get involved in this if this is the jurisdiction of the Speaker or the chairperson? That's a larger issue, pointing out that maybe these institutions are not independent, autonomous in their functioning. But be that as it may, let's look at two practice questions for your mains. Departmentally related standing committees in India play a critical role in parliamentary oversight of the executive. Discuss the efficiency of these committees in enhancing the accountability of government policies and programs. What are the key challenges they face in fulfilling their mandate? Suggest measures to improve their functioning. Second, Article 355 of the Indian Constitution empowers the Union to protect states against external aggression and internal disturbance. Analyze the impact of Article 355 on Indian federalism. To what extent does it affect the autonomy of the states? Critically evaluate with recent examples. That is it for our newspaper analysis today. Thank you so much for staying with me. And if you have stayed, then do join me 6 p.m. today, where we will have the first live class on the NCERT course, where we will discuss Constitution, why and how. And join me tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning, where we will have another edition of the Hindu newspaper analysis. And if you're liking these initiatives, do consider pressing the like button, share your comments in the comment section as well, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.